So in this video, I'm going to go over how I got further injured just because my father and his second and third wife like to lie about me. Now, I should fill you in. My father and his second wife crippled me at the age of 7. They gave me overdoses. My father allowed this, destroyed my nervous system. I lost my vision. She called for help. The help told her to bring me to the emergency room. She said they don't know what they're talking about, hung up, left me to die, screwed up my nervous system. Then she gave me a whole bottle of Ipecac as a punishment. Then doctors started reporting that something was wrong, so she put me in ballet and then moved me to Texas. Then she moved me to New Mexico. Then they moved me to Maine. All this crazy shit was going on. So how does my mother, my father's second wife, make sure that nobody ever listens to me about all this evidence? I mean, there was witnesses. There's people that watched this for years, teachers, doctors. How did she keep them all from getting together and doing something about this? Well, she said I was a storyteller. I lied and I stole stuff when I was 5 years old, when I was 6 years old. I'll give you an example. I won a swimming medal in an orphanage. They brought us in a van. They walked us from this parking garage over to a pool. We went in the pool. They told us to tread water for 5 minutes or something. I did the best. I was the best 4 or 5 year old to tread water. So they gave me a shiny bronze medal. They put my initials ZG because at the time my name was Zachary Ryan Greenelge. So they put ZG on the back and they gave it to me. All the other kids got candy or little parachute men. Then I was still wet, but they gave us a towel out as clothes, but my head was wet. We walked through the cold because this was about winter. It was freezing, snow outside. Things are freezing solid. And on the way to the van, my hair started to stiffen because it was wet. Well, even the chlorine bleach didn't keep it from stiffening because of the cold. But isn't it funny? I had no problems with my nervous system until my mother gave me an overdose. Is that a coincidence that my mother gives me an overdose? I lose my sight. I lose the ability to walk. I can't make any words out. I can't feel my mouth. I can't feel my tongue. Can't feel my nervous system. Can't stand up. Can't feel the carpet as I crawl. Pass out on a pile of newspaper. My breathing slows down. I'm left there to die, and I wake up with a feeling like electricity is going through my nervous system, and it gets worse, better for 25 years. And I never felt it until this overdose. Is that a coincidence that I get the worst feeling of this right with this overdose, the first time I ever feel it, and then every day after this overdose I feel it for life? Is that a coincidence? No. And I spoke up at this. If you're wondering, well, didn't you, it's your fault for not telling the doctors. Oh, I told the doctors. I told them over and over. My mother just lied. She called it an allergy attack. She said she didn't know what medications I was on. She didn't want to look into it, she told the doctor. Then she moved me to Texas and didn't speak to those doctors anymore. So anyways, we're going to go into today, how they hurt me today. So I'm still trying to get medical help for this. 25 years later, I'm still having seizures. I got cuts all over my body. My body's getting hurt. I'm on state insurance. Now, I had a seizure. My head bashed against the bureau because I went to the ground. Obviously, when you have a seizure and you're standing up, your body seizes to the ground. And on the way to the ground, my head hits a table and I start bleeding against the wall, almost hits the ceiling. My wall is covered in blood. I'm on the ground. I have a seizure. Now, when I come to, I'm screaming, ambulance, I need an ambulance, I need an ambulance while I'm on the floor. I just keep on saying that. Then after about an hour or two, I scream that I don't get any help. So then I try to get to a bed. Keep in mind that I'm a Jesus follower, so I try to help all the leopards in life. So I have an 84-year-old sex offender who's senile, and at this time I had a Raymond who is 50 years old and has the mental capacity of a 7-year-old. So two very disabled men. The 84-year-old sex offender comes in and tries to rape me. He starts trying to lick my ear out. I can't defend myself. I can't move my arms. He's causing me to shake worse. Then he puts his hands on my shoulder, tries to bend me onto the bed. He starts undoing his belt. I scream, "Get me an ambulance! Get the fuck out of here!" And I roll off the bed, causing my neurological disorder to get worse. He tries to keep on having sex with me until I scream at him, "Get me a motherfucking ambulance, you fucking pedophile piece." I just scream at him to stop trying to have sex with a man who's injured, basically, but I can't talk. I can only say basic words like ambulance, stop trying to have fucking sex with me, or something like that. But I can only use simple phrases because my head's bleeding all over me. Now, you would think that an 84-year-old would know that a man covered in blood, there's blood on the wall, I need stitches, my face is now swollen out like the Frankenstein monster because I now have a fracture on my skull. I also have a lot of problems, and they knew this when I got to the hospital. About 2 days later, the other man that's disabled, the man who has the intelligence of a 5-year-old, 7-year-old, he realizes, I think I should bring him to the emergency room. And I just say, yes, yes, help me get there. And he gets me most of the way there, ambulance, all that. When I get there, I try to share this whole event with the doctors. Now, the doctor tries to talk to Raymond. That's a big mistake. I told him, don't speak to Raymond. He doesn't make any sense and he's a compulsory liar. Raymond likes to tell stories. Like, for instance, he likes attention for saying that people beat him that didn't. His mother beat him. Every worker, every DMH worker that's ever worked with Raymond has been accused of beating him by Raymond in the first week. Every single one. All his friends he accuses of beating him. All his mother, his father, his brother, his friends, his workers, even his doctor. He tells, my doctor hit me. My doctor hit me. He does this all the time, and he loves making up stories for attention. He'll even call the bank and keep on calling them just to try to tell them stories. I'm not even kidding. He'll call the bank to tell them stories, nothing else. So this individual is not somebody who can help me. He was only to make sure I get to the emergency room because I've been needing one after 2 days. But I can't speak. I'm seizing. I'm bloody all over. So I'm not in any condition. Now, the sex offender that tried to rape me is at home, and the disabled man is no help. So the doctor doesn't even spend time trying to go with me. I get out what happened. I had a seizure, I had a fall, I hit my head, I bled, and then somebody tried to have sex with me that made this more traumatic. But because the sex stuff happened, the doctor didn't want to treat me for the seizure. So he released me on the spot with no further testing to bleed out in the front. Remember, I can't walk. So I'm stuck now on a seat because they just poured me out of the wheelchair onto a seat. I can't get to the bus stop. I can't do anything, and I'm still bleeding. My head's still swollen. I still can't form sentences. I still can't walk. I still have a head injury. I still just recovered from a seizure, and I still just got done being raped, or almost being raped by another man because I had a seizure. And the doctor thinks that this means I should be released right away. No. Why is this happening? Why is the doctor treating me this way? Because of my mother and father. Now you'd be like, I don't understand how that connection is made. Well, I gave the doctors permission to report anything like this that happens to my mother and father. Now, my mother is dead, so there's just my father left, and his new wife who knows nothing of the situation. She likes to pretend like she was there for me as a kid or something, but she never met me. She was never bringing me to school. She never saw me in New Mexico. She never saw my mother act unstable. She never saw my mother beat me with a ruler. She never saw how many meds I took. She doesn't even know what meds I was taking. She doesn't know what type of education I got. She was never there. So she knows nothing. She's just my stepmother. She's my father's new wife after my mother passed away. Anyways, so I have my father as my emergency contact. Now that's probably a big mistake I make, but I'm supposed to love and honor my father. So, was to let the information go to him. Well, that was a big mistake because apparently that gave his wives and him permission to talk to all my doctors and tell them I'm a fantasy maker. I tell stories and I make up fantasies, is what they told my doctor, what I've never done in my life. It's only a phrase they use to get out of responsibility and trouble. I have never, ever made up a fantasy or a lie. I have never lied to them. I'm actually so honest. If I did something like steal a bottle of wine, I came forward with it right after. That's how honest I was. Out of all the other kids in the program, I was the one always being honest. I was always the kid that was in trouble with the other kids for being too honest. I'm always too honest. Zach is too honest. He's the only kid wanting to go to church. No other kid is going to church in the program because they're not allowed to. But yet Zach sneaks with the staff to church. I have to sneak to church? Yes, I had to sneak to church. I was the only kid that wanted to go to church. That's why. And they said, okay, we're not allowed to because we're a state program, but we'll let the staff sneak you out of here to go to church. I was that kid at 15. I was the kid that wanted to go to church. Why? Because it's better than being at the program, and God, I really believe He's out there. So, why again do the doctors mistreat me and malpractice me, and why do I keep on getting hurt? Because whenever I go to the doctors for a severe injury, they just send me out thanks to my father, my mother, and this new wife lying, fantasizing. My father and his new wives make up fantasies about me, and then they call the doctor and say I'm the one making up the fantasy. So as I bleed blood all over my face, as my face is swollen, and don't forget I sent a picture to my father, and they see that my face is broken and my whole head is swollen, and I'll have permanent scars all over my face. My knees are all cut up, everything. My whole body's fucked. There's blood on the wall, too. So this is a serious event. Do I get any medical treatment for the serious seizure where somebody tried to rape me? Do I get any medical treatment for that? No. I wanted to stay and get medical treatment, but my doctor would not let me stay in the emergency room to do further testing. Why in hell would a doctor have a guy bleeding, his face swollen outwards? He just had a seizure and the brain scan shows that. He's reporting that somebody tried to have sex with him. There's blood all over his clothing. His face is swollen out. They had to stitch up the part where my head ended up hitting the table. I'm definitely crying in pain. Why would a doctor then right away release you out of the hospital to do no testing? Why would they do that? Because when they called my mother, or sorry, my father and my mother and my stepmother, my mother's dead. My adopted mother is dead. My biological mother I got taken away from. My adopted mother crippled me and died after killing herself with drugs and alcohol. Then my father quickly married my mother's best friend, and now that would be my stepmother. Too many mothers in this to remember. So, my stepmother and my father told the doctor not to believe me about any of my illnesses, not to treat me, and that I'm telling fantasies and lies. So when the doctor got off with my father, he did no further treatment and just sent me out because it's much easier than dealing with a hard case. See, I have to spend years getting these doctors to pay attention to the blood running down my face. But then they make one phone call to my father and he spins a bunch of lies or says, call my attorney. Or he says, Zach's just a fantasy teller and he likes to tell lies. Don't treat him. So then the doctors don't treat me. I'm going to die from this. My father is getting me killed. His second wife, my mother, poisoned me. She literally gave me a full bottle of Epicac and bragged in front of witnesses. Not only that, she gave me an overdose. And when her child at 7 years old spoke about this overdose at age 7, nothing was done about it. My mother lied, came up with fantasies, and manipulated. Now, when I try to go to the doctor because I'm covered in blood from a seizure, my father calls me the fantasy spinner, and then I can't get any medical treatment. This is how they're going to get me killed. If I die before the age of 40, this is how. My father and his wives are preventing me from getting any health care for the last 25 years. I keep on having seizures. I keep on getting bloodied up. They keep on finding me on the side of the road. They keep on finding me frozen to death. And I can't take much more dying. I can't take much more seizures. I can't take much more bloodiness. And the worst part about it is all they have to do is stop telling my doctors bullshit. And then I can get treated like everybody else. The problem isn't anything with the doctors. The problem isn't with me. The problem is with my second mother, my adopted mother, who caused this neurological disorder in the first place. The problem is with my father. My problem is with the stepmother. But there's too many mothers involved here. We got my biological mother putting me up for adoption. Then you got me going through a bunch of foster mothers. Then you got a foster mother adopting me. Then that's my adopted mother. And what really bothers me is the overdose at age 7. I mean, that's fucked up shit. I lost my vision, I lost my body, and nobody wants to listen. That's fucked up shit. Then you got my mother bragging and telling witnesses like my sister and my brother and stepbrother, no, brother-in-law. Um, oh, it's so hard to remember all the different brothers. I got biological brothers, I got stepbrothers, I got brothers from the adopted family. Too many brother names. Everybody else just gets to call them mom, dad. Me, if I say mom, they say, oh no, you're talking about your biological mother. If you say the word biological, you must be talking about your biological. There's too many names here. They go into fantasy land very easy. Keep that in mind if you're trying to talk to them. I stutter and I make mistakes with words sometimes. I'll correct myself, but that doesn't mean that somebody else should pick it and make up a fantasy about it. Anyways, so when I went to the emergency room, what you can look up this visit. I'm sure they have a report. I'm sure they say that I came in there bloody, not making much sense. I said that I had a seizure and that there was something involved, thanks to Raymond being involved. So you got all this going on, and I'm released as soon as they talk to my father. Why? Because my father says, don't treat him. He's making up a story. Let him bleed on the street. After I just had a seizure, I'm being released thanks to my father, my mother, and my father's new wife. They continue to lie and manipulate and prevent me from getting the care I need. Why? Because then people might realize that my father and my mother did something wrong. See, it's much easier just to call her my mother instead of giving each one a different phrase. Because then I got to do adopted mother, I got to do biological mother, I got to do stepmother, I got to do foster mother. And if I stutter the wrong one in the beginning, then my stepmother will pick it apart and say, oh no, see, oh yeah, see, he stuttered a word, see, that means something, I don't care what you say, that means something, I know that means something, no, I'm going to make up a whole fantasy because he stuttered a word. That's how they do this. I stutter biological instead of adopted or step. Let's say I'm talking about my stepmother and how she brought illegal drugs into the house. But I say stepmother. If I say something like that, then later my stepmother will say, no, you're just mad at your biological mother. You're just, and you know how I know that? I go, how? How do you know what I am talking about when you're not in my head? Tell me. Tell me what fantasy you're going to spin this time. Oh, but well, because you stuttered the word biological, you're really talking about your biological mother. So you need to stop doing that because you have no problem with me. You're just redirecting your anger. No, I want to know why you brought Percocet and Xanax into my father's house, which I just lost my Social Security to help him pay for. I want to know why your name is not on the bottles and why somebody like me who's struggling with addiction, who just lost his mother, who literally just got beaten with rulers for years, literally is on multiple medications, can't quite see what up and down is. You got multiple reports from the whole family. The whole family's breaking apart. We got a lot of screaming, and you think it's okay to bring somebody else's illegal drugs into the house? See, that's the type of conversation I would want to have with her. But then she'll just redirect that into, now I don't want to talk to you. This is only to do with your biological mother. Did my biological mother ever go into my father's house in Chelmsford? I don't know. No, she didn't. This is a problem with you. Just like when I bring up my adopted mother, Patricia, giving me an overdose and changing my body for life. I need medical treatment for that. I've been speaking about it for 25 years, trying to get medical care. But every time I brought this up with my mother and father, they dodged the question. They made excuses. My mother would come up with lies and fantasies to make sure nobody would listen to me. And that is fucked up shit. If I stutter, all of a sudden they come up with a big fantasy to connect to the stutter, when really you just have to ask me. I fuck up words that are related. Sometimes when I'm trying to say a 9, I say a 6 because they're related. That happens a lot. It has to do with the neurological disorder. It comes and goes. It depends on the voltage in my back. If my legs are twitching a lot and I'm very twitchy, I'm going to have more trouble making up words or putting words together or forming words, I think is the way to say that. Yeah, forming words and sentences. I'm going to have more trouble with that. But if it's warm, if I've taken a triliptal, if I've taken epilepsy or seizure medication, I do a lot better. Epilepsy medication seems to be the right type of medication I need, but I can't get any because my father keeps on getting in the way of my medical care. He's got in the way of Social Security. I can't collect. He collected for me, lied to them, and now I can't collect. Okay, well, how about my inheritance? I should have that. My mother passed away, right? No, my father swooped in and took all state inheritance. I was supposed to inherit her retirement with my father, but he swooped in and grabbed it all. He locked me in the house so I couldn't visit her or go to any of these hearings. How about the next one? My medical care. What happened in 25 years? You would think I would have some diagnoses or something to go along with this. Nope. When I spoke about this in Westford, they just lied and manipulated. When I started speaking up too much, they moved me to Texas. When I started speaking up too much in Texas, my mother moved me to New Mexico. After I got wicked abused in New Mexico, I had something else to talk about. They moved me to Maine. Then when I got in Maine, they tried to home educate me by yelling at me, my mother did. My father did better. He actually, when he was there, the classroom went okay. Um, then they moved me to Massachusetts, and I'm so fucked up, I don't know up from down, and I'm still not receiving medical treatment for what happened to me in Westford. And I spent year after year after year begging for help with this, speaking about it right in front of my mother and father. My mother calls it some weird allergy. She doesn't know the medication. Stop talking about it, Zach, is what I got every single time. In Chelmsford, I'm bumping into stuff. My shins are always bloody. My wrists are bumping in the doorknobs. And my mother calls me in the room. I tell her, yeah, this happens all the time. What do you think my mother does? She tries to turn it into a mental illness again so she can get me drugged on medicine more so nobody ever figures out what's really wrong with me. That's fucked up shit. My mother's gonna get me killed and my father's helping her. Now she passes away because she does these drugs and alcohol too, and her liver fails. At the age of 60, you can't be popping pills like candy. And my mother is. And my father's trying to ignore it. When my mother got caught taking my Vicodin that was prescribed to me, because of the side effects from the medication I was prescribed. I was brought to an emergency room with severe migraines, headaches. They gave me Vicodin. I went home. My mother went in the closet and started popping them. So I brought it to my father. This wasn't the first time she was popping pills. Wasn't the first time I caught her drunk. Wasn't the first time she did something that she wasn't supposed to. But my father says it's only one time. Why are you? And puts the blame on me. My mother is popping Vicodin that is mine, and it's my fault. How is it my fault? Oh, 'cause I got permission to sit on the bed in their room. They first say, well, why are you in our room? I said, I got permission to be in here. Well, we don't want you in our room anymore. You told me I could sit on the bed. I asked to sit on the bed. I asked to be here. I didn't do nothing wrong. But yet they turn it around on me and try to act like I'm doing something wrong by reporting my mother popping my Vicodin. All I did was bring it to my father. My father goes upstairs, asks my mother if it's true. Are you taking your son's Vicodin? And she goes, yeah, so what? It's only one time. See, then my father turns to me and goes, see, it's only one time. See, you shouldn't be doing this and you shouldn't be doing that. What shouldn't I be doing? You shouldn't be coming in this room. I asked for permission and you gave me permission. Well, we'll come up with something else to punish you for later. Just get out of here. I'm getting punished once again. I'm getting yelled at once again because my mother is popping my medication inappropriately and trying to get high off them. My mother's trying to get high off of pills and alcohol, and I'm the one in trouble. See how much that would fuck up a 15-year-old's head? And yes, it did. It took me a lot of adulthood to unwind all the crazy stuff my mother and father wanted me to do. But now I need medical treatment. Now I need my social security. I need to go back to work, and then I want to stay far away from this crazy psychological bullshit. Far away from people holding me down, sticking Thorazine in me, causing lifetime of problems. Far away from people giving me pills and then I experience an overdose and then everybody ignores it. Far away from a place where doctors malpractice you all because your father and mother want to continually lie and manipulate. I mean, like I said, just a couple years ago I had a seizure in the bedroom. When I was brought to the emergency room would not help me. Why? Because they thought the truth was a fantasy. Why would they think that? There's blood all over me. They're stitching up my face. They see me shaking. The brain scan looks like I had a seizure. Why would they think this is a fantasy when there's all this proof right in front of them? Because there's a sex thing involved. The male doctor doesn't like the sex thing because he's making fun of me in the hallway with the nurse, going, "What do you want to do? Bring him upstairs and give him a sponge bath?" No, I'm releasing him. No, no, no. The parents said it's fantasies. I'm releasing him. So I'm covered in blood. I got stitches. I got a fracture in my skull. I've literally just had a seizure. And what do? What do you think they do? They release me because my father and my mother keep on lying about me, so I can't get medical treatment. If I get hit by a car and go to the emergency room, my father will call the car a fantasy. If somebody hits me with a baseball bat and I go unconscious, my father will call it all a fantasy. The only time my father won't call it a fantasy is if somebody else comes forward with the information, another witness. And because I'm a caregiver who helps a lot of disabled people who don't drive and might not be all there in the head, I help the lepers in this world. I'm not quite sure if I have one of those. I thought my father was a good person, but seeing as he's continually getting me killed, I don't know if I can continue calling him a good person. I've now brought this up to him and said, "Hey, I really need to stop getting hurt from your choices. I really need you to clean up this mess you created with your second wife. Every time I go to the emergency room, I get further hurt because of your nonsense. I need your nonsense to be cleared up. No more nonsense, Dad. No more your wives calling things fantasies. No more calling me a liar. No more of that bullshit. Because after 15 years of getting hurt by doctors on your word, I know how this goes. I know that it's going to take me years and years and years of working with doctors to get anywhere thanks to my mother and my father because of all their lies and manipulations. But what might work is taking my name out of the picture. If I changed my name and went to an emergency room, let's say in Maine, I would get help right away. I have black urine. I have scars all over my body. I shake all the time. My speech is fucked up. I look like somebody who had a seizure and a head injury because I do after. I mean, when I have a seizure, I'm all covered in blood, scratched up. You can tell. I mean, everybody on this world can tell something's wrong. The doctors and the nurses know something's wrong. The only problem is they don't want to deal with such a tough case, especially with my mother and father spending so many years calling it a fantasy. So, only the better emergencies work with me. So when I get sent to Wentworth Douglas Hospital, they do further testing and they say, "Oh, yep, this is a seizure. Oh, yep, we got an x-ray. Oh, we didn't see anything. We'll have to do more." And they get a little bit. They actually do a little bit. They listen. But at Frisbee, they're not capable of dealing with a tough case like somebody who's had seizures and a neurological disorder for 25 years. His mother covered it up, lied and manipulated. Then she killed herself with drugs and alcohol. Then the kid ended up becoming a drug and alcoholic. Then he got sober. Then he moved to New Hampshire. But the father is still trying to lie, and he remarried, and his new wife is pretending to be his mother, calling his doctors and lying some more, saying that everything's a fantasy, everything's a lie. Well, that's going to get me killed for sure, especially in the fact that thanks to this disability, I can't use a shelter. I can't drive a car. I'm not, by the way, I've wanted to drive so bad and I've passed the learner's permit test. I have tried to drive somebody home and I do okay for a short amount of time as long as the heat is on me. I could drive just fine. That's not the problem. It's when I have an accident, I can't drive all the time. Like this morning, no way. The windows are closed, my legs are shaking, my arm is popping by itself. No, there's no way I could drive a car today. But after I take my triliptal, it kicks in. After I go outside, get fresh air on a 95-degree day, maybe I could drive for 30 minutes. But I don't get to drive because we still don't have my disability looked into. 25 years and my father's still hiding it so I can't get help. My father's still preventing me from getting help, and this is the end. I've had so many seizures and so many injuries I can barely walk or move my arms. I'm a skinny, if you saw me before, if you saw me in Lowell, and then you saw me now, you can see every year it gets worse. If you've seen the progression, but see, my father's kept me moving so much. I'm not sure how many people really would know me at age 5. How many people know me from age 5 to 31? Nobody. Thanks to my father moving me to Texas, moving me to New Mexico, moving me to Maine, moving me to this program, moving me to that program. Even my own sister really never spent a lot of time with me. Why? Because I was never home. I was either getting drugged or I was nonsense. Or for instance, at my own adoption party, I was given drugs before we went by my mother, and I went so tired. I was so drowsy, that during this party, while people are bringing me little birthday gifts, this is an adoption party set up like a birthday party. Now, I'm a kid, so, I mean, at the time, I'm a kid. I'm like 7 years old. So I really, really, really love the fact that I'm in a party for me, right? I do. But the drugs are kicking in, and I'm getting drowsier and drowsier and drowsier. My eyes won't stay open. I cannot seem to stay awake. I'm looking for a place to curl up and sleep, and these adults want me to try to stay awake. No, my mother is putting me to sleep with these pills. Why do you want me to stay awake? I gotta sleep. I gotta sleep. I gotta sleep. I'm trying to find a place on the floor to sleep. Eventually, somebody pulls up a chair so I can sit. Then I sit and I do a little better, but my eyes are half masked. I look so tired. But then my mother starts spreading that I must be depressed. She doesn't tell anybody that I'm taking medication, that she just gave me pills. Literally, I don't even mean taking medication like on regular schedule. My mother gave me these pills right before we got in the car. She knew that these pills were going to make me super drowsy, and this never happened again. She used to line up these super drowsy pills right before important events that she didn't want me talking, I guess. Now, I got adopted after the overdose, so that could be why. Because after I had an overdose, I spoke up at the doctor's office. That's when my mother started turning swimming medals into really fucked up shit. She was purposely trying to screw with my brain, I think. I mean, I won a swimming medal, and my mother turned that into it must be an African Americans. I'm a liar. I come up with fantasies. I'm a thief, and I have attachment disorder. All because her son, her new adopted son, just came into the room and said, "This is the swimming medal I won in the orphanage." And she came up with this whole spun fantasy based on that. Her son literally just came out of the Legos that were in the orphanage that I came with, pulled a medal out of the Legos, walked over to my mother and my father, showed them the medal I won in the orphanage. And my mother belittled me, twisted my mind, did all different types of fucked up shit, punished me, stole my medal, told me I'm no good, told me an African American must be the one winning this, killing my self esteem, taking away my accomplishment, and going around telling everybody that I must be a liar and a thief and have attachment disorder. Just like when she gave me the pills during my adoption, she's going around telling everybody I must have depression, even though she's giving me drugs. I want to, if anybody asked me and pulled me aside and spent an hour talking to me about what was going on that day, I would have said, my mother just gave me some pills and I'm very, very tired. But instead, everybody's coming up to me going, "Aren't you happy to be here? Aren't you happy to be here?" My mother had a plan. She wanted it to look like something was wrong with me. So she gave me downers and then said I had depression to the whole family. This was a plan my mother kept on doing. Whenever she had to show me off to the family when I was very, very young in Westford, pills were always involved when there was a lot of witnesses. She was getting me ready for Social Security by giving me downers like Benadryl or Percocet, or when I had the overdose at age 7, by trying to do stuff like that in public. She could call it depression or say something was wrong with me. I'm going up, I'm hyper 1 minute, and then I'm down the next. But she's not telling everybody that she just gave me pills. That's the missing information. That's where my mother manipulates the narrative. She doesn't give you any context. She doesn't give you the context of, I was just given pills. Instead, she just goes around saying, look at my son, look how tired he looks. His eyes are half masked. What do you think is wrong with him? And they go, I don't know, he looks tired. Then another person says, yeah, something's wrong with him. Then another person goes, yeah, something's definitely wrong with him. Then my mother goes, I think it's depression. And then they say, it could be. Was he given anything? And then my mother goes, when really the answer is, yes, you sure did. You gave me pills right before we got in the fucking car. And then as soon as those pills kicked in, I got drowsy. And then when we got to my party, I almost fell asleep on the fucking floor. I was looking for a fucking spot on the floor to fall asleep because my mother gave me pills and was manipulating a narrative to try to make me look mentally ill when I'm just a normal hyper kid who a mother is giving pills to. But yet nobody cared about that when I brought it up to the doctor. Nobody cared about the overdose. Nobody cared about the extra epicac. Nobody cared about the ballet. Nobody cared about Texas. Nobody cared about New Mexico. Nobody cared about the homeschooling in Maine. Nobody cared about the heavy druggings in Chelmsford when my mother just totally started spouting nonsense everywhere and letting the doctors start drugging me. Oh, yes, if you give bad information to your doctor will give malpractice in return. Because if you give good, your doctor is only as good as the information you give him. I'll say that one more time. Your doctor is only as good as the information you have given him. So if you give bad information, if you lie and manipulate your doctor, you're going to get bad treatment. So if my mother was lying and manipulating the doctor, what I know for 100% fact is true. I was there when she did it. I was there multiple times when my mother did things she wasn't supposed to. I would get bad treatment. And that's exactly what happened from age 12 to 23. I got bad medical treatment because I did not know how the medical system worked, and my mother did. So my mother manipulated the medical system to try to get the results that my mother wanted. She wanted me to look like a sickly, sick boy who was mentally ill. This is what and she also wanted to make sure nobody would ever believe me or listen to me. And because of this, I was talking more and more. I tried to get people to listen more and more and more and more. Yes, that's a big problem. I couldn't get anybody to listen about this overdose, the Epicac punishment, and my mother used to brag about some of this stuff because she got away with it for so long. Like, for instance, my mother admitted to giving me extra Epicac as a punishment in front of my sister, my father, and my sister's husband. She literally admitted this. Now, this was the hardest time for me to have her admit it because it was so many years later. But this wasn't the first time. She bragged about this for about 2 years after she did it. Then when we went to Texas, she told one of her friends about it. Then when we went to Maine, it stopped. Then when we moved back to Massachusetts, that's when I told a psychiatrist about it, and she lied and said it never happened. Then we went to the house, and they were asking me why I'm so upset with my mother all the time because she's acting crazy and she's hurting me. That's all. Stop hurting me. Stop lying about me. Stop making up stories. Stop twisting fantasies, and we can have a good relationship. But 50% of the time, my mother was trying to get me killed, and now it's time for me to die. I literally am at the end of my illness. You don't live for 25 years with the type of illnesses I have, and you keep going. No, I'm bloodied up. I got scars all over my body. I have no way to work. I have no way to collect Social Security. I can't use shelters. I have no support system thanks to me being moved around all the time. It's just impossible to live because my father and mother made sure that I would die as soon as I turned 18. Yep, they made sure I would never collect Social Security. They made sure of that at 19. My mother made sure my health would be too fucked up for life. That's why she wanted Social. She had to fuck up my health to get Social Security, but I can't get any medical care to get healthy enough to go to work. So I can't even get medical care to get myself better. So this is just, there are no cards to play in front of me. It's dead, 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 dead. It's live outside, live outside, live outside. Get exposure. Walk until you seize. Go into the emergency room like it's a revolving door. Seizure, emergency room, release, woods, fall, seizure, emergency room, woods, until my heart gives out. This is what is going to happen again. Don't think that I'm just like making this like, no, this happened to me. My father dropped me off at a shelter that wouldn't take me due to my disabilities not being documented. Then I had to live out in the woods and couch surf. Then I would get hurt. Then I would go to another shelter. They wouldn't let me stay for very long due to my disability, or it would be the shelter in Lawrence that would always let me stay. All they needed was an ID. They didn't care if I had a seizure in the bathroom. They didn't care if somebody hit you with a brick. They didn't care if somebody was shooting up in the bathroom. They didn't care if somebody was about to die in their sleep. That shelter did not care, so I was able to stay there for 30 days, and then I had to stay 60 days out. Then I could come back for another 30 days, and then I had to do 60 days out. That's how the rule for everybody at that shelter. You only get 30 days, and then you have to be out of the shelter for 60 days. So I used that one quite common because they would take me. But most shelters, as soon as I had a seizure, or as soon as I couldn't get out of bed quick enough, or as soon as my legs locked up, or as soon as I had speech problems, they wanted me to prove it or I couldn't come back. Either show paperwork of this disability or you can't come back. And so, of course, I can't go back, I can't use most of those. So I have to live outside during winter in 0 degrees, thanks to my father and mother's choices with my health care. Nothing I chose. I mean, they're letting drug addicts in there. I mean, there are drug addicts who are allowed to use the shelter, and I'm not, thanks to my mother and father. I mean, I can use all the drugs and use these shelters that I want, but thanks to me not having documentation of my disabilities, I can't. So my father and mother have done something so bad that I can't work, I can't live, I can't do anything until this disability is documented. I'm being treated for it, and then I can go back to work or I can use a shelter. But until we get that first step that was supposed to be done 25 years ago, that first step is your child is having seizures, he had an overdose, he has a problem with his nervous system, he's bumping into stuff, he's having problems talking, he's having problems moving his limbs and arms. That has to be handled before I drive. That has to be handled before I work. So, that's the real problem. My mother and father wanted the vacation. They wanted to go on cruises. They wanted to lock me up in the places. They wanted to lie and manipulate to make their lives easier. And this is the real problem. There's nothing I can do about that because if it was something I created, maybe I could fix it. But this isn't a problem that I created. No, this is a problem that my mother created, and I did not try to cover it up either. I've been trying to come clean with it for 25 years. But see, my mother lied and manipulated, and they continue to call my doctors and say everything's a fantasy, everything's a lie. So that's the other problem. I'm telling the truth. I'm going to the doctors. I'm going to Social Security. I'm going to the places I'm supposed to go. I'm telling the truth. I am giving the deep down hard stuff to talk about. I'm not holding back. I am not manipulating. I'm giving the PTSD memories straight from the get-go, straight from everything. I'm giving God's honest truth. I'm swearing on the Bible that everything I say is to my best of my ability, the truth and nothing but the truth. So help me God. I'm doing that. Meanwhile, my father and his new wife call my doctor and say, it's all a fantasy. Don't listen to him. He's just trying to hurt us, I bet. Meanwhile, every single one of their kids, my sister, me, my brother, even their grandkids, was totally scared of all the craziness that was happening with my mother. We all knew that my mother was going crazy and doing stuff she wasn't supposed to. We all knew that. But see, my father and his new wife want to run from their responsibilities. And that's their motive. They don't want to have to lose any money. They don't want to lose any happiness. They don't want to be embarrassed. They don't want to admit they did something wrong. And they don't want to take the responsibility for their actions. So they're going to call me a liar. They're going to call me crazy. They're going to say it's a fantasy. And they're going to continue trying to prevent me from getting medical care. Because as soon as I get medical care, then this becomes real. Then they have to suck it up. But if my father can prevent me from getting medical care just for another 4 years, then he can run away from it permanently, because then he'll be 90. By then, nobody will ever listen to me, right? So he just has to get me hurt a little more to get away with it. That's all my father needs. He just needs to get me hurt a little longer, make sure nobody listens to me for a little longer, make sure I have a couple more seizures, make sure I continue not getting proper medical treatment for just a couple more years, and then he can get away with his half of it and he doesn't have to deal with this. That's his idea. My idea is I just want to get proper medical treatment. I want to go to the emergency room after my seizures and have them actually run testing and not be, well, the father calls it a fantasy, so we got to get him out of here. Yeah, he's covered in blood, but he probably did that to himself, so get him out of here. That's the type of treatment I get after my seizures. I'm not even kidding. They'll find me on the side of the road, all bloodied up, unconscious. They'll bring me to the emergency room. My face is swollen, I'm covered in blood, my whole body's covered in scrapes from the seizure. But then the doctor will come in and say, well, the father says it's all a fantasy. It's all made up, it's all a mental illness, and he's doing it to himself. So, we just release him, because must be some self-harming event. So then I come to and they say they're releasing me, and then I'm in the waiting room covered in blood with no clue what just happened to me. Why? Because my mother and father made sure that I couldn't get medical treatment once again. And they've been doing this for 25 years. And the doctors only started to listen to me in the last 8 years. When I was a teenager and child, my parents could manipulate the whole narrative. I had no say. They could pull my house under mine. They could prevent me from doing a lot of stuff. They could prevent me from going to my own mother's funeral. They could prevent me from seeing my mother while she's dying. They can prevent these things. They can prevent me from telling the doctors why my mother is dying. If the doctors asked me why if my mother was drinking or taking pills, I would have a much different answer than my father, because I know what the answer to that question is. My father would lie and say it's for her own protection. Well, we don't want her name sullied, is what my father would say. Well, how about my name? How about my name? I'm getting sullied for stuff I didn't even do. How about that? You're protecting her from stuff she actually did, like popping pills or drinking. But how about me? You guys are twisting and blowing stuff out of proportion or trying to make up stories about me. And you guys don't think that that's sullying somebody's name? Or how about preventing me from getting health care? When I go to the emergency room after I'm unconscious from a seizure, everybody else gets a brain scan like I did in Lowell. Everybody else is kept overnight. Everybody else is looked into further. But me, they call my father, they call it a fantasy, they call it made up, they say it's some mental illness that's been around forever, and then the doctors don't even look into the physical ailments that are wrong with me. And they've done this for years, so it works every time. My father's strategy to get me killed works every time. Every time I go in there bleeding with actual seizures, and all they have to do is a couple tests, and then we would have more on it, my father just says it's a fantasy, it's a mental illness, get him out of there. And then the insurance refused to pay and they released me before doing any testing. They've been doing it for 25 years. When I was age 7, in the doctor's office, I mentioned the overdose, the loss of vision, the problems with my nervous system. And then the doctor looked at my mother and father, who turned white and pale. And my mother, this is what she said: it's an allergy attack to medications. Then the doctor said, what medications? Then she goes, well, I don't know. You don't know? When was this? Well, it was a combination, my mother says, of medication. She goes, it was a combo of medications, and he had an allergy to it. Well, when was this? I don't remember, my mother says. So she doesn't remember the medication. Well, can you get me a list? No, she says. She doesn't want any further looking into this. She says she doesn't want to look into it anymore. This is when I'm 7, and she knows something is wrong. She knows that now the teachers also tell my mother there's something wrong with his coordination. We need to have him in physical therapy. And then the teachers say, we should put him in speech therapy. Something has changed in his speech. Then my mother decides to put me in ballet, getting me made fun of at the school for being gay because I'm the only boy in ballet, but yet the older girls in this ballet class go to my school in a different school classroom. So all the kids find out I'm in ballet thanks to my mother putting me in ballet. Why did she put me in ballet? To treat me because she gave me an overdose, and now she doesn't want to listen to the doctors when I bring it up. So now she's coming up with her own treatments, her own fucked up treatments. But of course, ballet is not going to cure a neurological disorder that was caused by an overdose. So I'm still shaky. I'm still not able to throw a football. I still suck at baseball. I still suck at walking in the cold. And everybody still knows this. It gets better. I keep working at it. Don't get me wrong. I found coping skills. I do very well now at coping with what my mother did to me. But nobody else is helping me with it. After 25 years, I don't even have it documented yet. Why? Because people are trying to run from their responsibilities, lying and manipulating once again. And you don't need to believe a word of his wife's because she knows nothing of the situation. She just wants to keep spending my father's money. She wants her life to stay easy. So she's going to say whatever she needs to say to keep that going, even if it kills me. So she's not going to be part of this. She knows nothing about the situation. She wasn't there at the doctor. She knows nothing about any of this. My father knows, and he would need to talk to me, and then I could reawaken his brain on parts he might have forgotten. Then he'll go, "Oh yeah, I remember that. Oh yeah, I remember that." He would say. But see, my father, he wants to bury this in him. He wants to bottle it, bury it. He wants to call me a liar, a fantasy, a thief, whatever allows him to get away with it.